Please welcome Managing Director, GSSO APJC, Steve Dane.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. How's everybody feeling? Good. Yes, good, yes. Thank you for coming. It's 8:30, no it's not, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and I know there's a lot of competition for things to do at this stage of the day. There's Edwin's specialist session, but at least today we don't have the competition of the dog therapy over the way, which really made a bit of an impact on the numbers. But what we want to do today is talk to you about simplicity and network security management. And we want to take you on a journey to simple. We want you to feel simple at the end of this session. And that is because simplicity is a key element of security. You know, we say that complexity is the enemy of security. Threats are becoming more sophisticated, networks are becoming more difficult to manage, and as a result, things are becoming more complex and they're creating real issues for our customers. And so we want to give you three things today, three areas that we know have been real key issues for our customers. And the first one is really important, and that's how we can help customers migrate from ASA to FTD. If we can do that, then we're in business. We also want to show you how these customers who have a variety of firewalls, typically within their environment, can set up consistent policies and ensure that they can enforce those policies across those multiple form factors. Really important, because that's where risks lie. And thirdly, how importantly we can take all of this and integrate it into our architecture and really add value and show how customers can actually create actionable intelligence around the events that they see and really add value to that investigation process. So we have three objectives. And my friends here, Jeff and Will, are going to come up on stage in just a minute and really dig into the details. Managing network security today is really hard. I think you'd all agree. And in fact, some of our competitors have made a real effort at making it look easy. I'm not going to mention any names. Jeff gets very upset if we start mentioning competitors' names. But some of them have made a business out of actually targeting the network security manager and making that look easy. And we're going to show you today exactly how we can compete with that. And the reason it's hard is, as I've said, there are many different form factors just within the Cisco portfolio. ASA, FTD, Meraki, virtual firewalling. And because of this diverse set of devices that the customer has to manage, then there are significantly different policies, different management consoles, and because of that, that creates errors, it creates inconsistencies, it creates a manual process that is very time-consuming, and so that cost of complexity really has an impact. Often we're trying to stop that external threat, the 0 day, but more often than not, security issues arise out of manual errors, misconfigurations. One example that just came to light recently was Capital One. You may have heard about that. 100 million credit card details stolen, at least $100 million of cost associated with that breach, initially through a misconfigured firewall. So it really is a challenge, and it leads to errors and the potential for breaches, and so it increases the risk that customers have if they don't get this right. So the stats here show there's a massive demand for this. This is a real problem, and I know that our customers struggle with it as well. And ultimately, if it really affects the security, the sort of openness or propensity to be attacked, then it has a real impact on customers. So we want to show you today how to do it differently. What if we rethink security management? And that cloud is a bit of a giveaway as to how we're going to do that. So I'd like to invite Jeff and Will onto the stage to dig into the details. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much.
I need my glasses. Thank you, Steve. All right, so you've probably all figured out by now that this is going to be a cloud management security session. So when we talk about easy management, how many of you think Firepower Management Center is easy, besides Will? Maybe me. Yeah, and Toby.
It's not.
So when we acquired SourceFire, we have this wonderful management console called Firepower Management Center, SecOps focused, very powerful, but not an easy learning curve, right? And we've heard that from our customers. So when we wanted to rethink this, we wanted to solve as many problems as we could with a new paradigm for helping customers manage policy. So when we look at CDO, the vision for CDO is to have this unified policy and threat visibility, the ability to consolidate policy and have consistency across different control points, different platforms, et cetera. You'll see several at the bottom here. We're going to demo a whole bunch of them today. Some of them are coming later, right? SD-WAN security, for example, coming later, but we're going to show how we can use CDO to manage policies on, of course, ASA, Firepower Threat Defense, Meraki, AWS security groups, again, some of those other cloud services coming later. So making that very easy for customers to take that unified policy and layer it across multiple control points. So what are the main tenets of CDO? We wanted to attack the main objections of customers, right? Of course, having one security policy like I just described, but resolving policy issues. When you have a customer who's managing multiple platforms that have been in place for a long time, and many of us that used Cisco Security Manager back in the day remember this quite clearly, you often end up with a situation where you have a lot of overlap of objects and redundancy, and this firewall has 10 rules, this other firewall has maybe the same 10 rules in different order, objects are different, et cetera. We wanted to make that easy to resolve those kinds of issues. We also wanted to be able to ease the care and feeding of the platforms with this. So things like software upgrades, configuring HA, pushing out configuration changes that don't take 10 minutes, but they take under a minute, right? So big objections from our customers that we wanted to address head on with Cisco Defense Orchestrator. And then, of course, this notion of smart configuration management, being able to perform auditing, scheduling, just things that customers expect and demand, and make it very, very, very easy. These are all the main premises behind CDO. So how do we achieve this? Well, across all of our platforms in SBG, we've been moving to this API-first strategy, and this is especially true with Firepower. So every new feature that goes into Firepower Threat Defense now is orchestrated with an API right from the get-go, right from the time the feature is put into the platform. And again, compare this to the days of old when we get a new feature in one of our platforms. It was a command line feature with 17 different subcommands and so on. It's like, okay, how are we going to put slap a GUI on this thing later? With Firepower Threat Defense, everything is orchestrated with an API first, and CDO is using those native APIs for orchestration, which makes configuration very easy and very fast. Also, the on-box manager that we're going to demo as well pretty briefly, Firepower Device Manager, using the exact same APIs built into the device. And in fact, you can use them both at the same time. So a platform that's deployed, customer can access Firepower Device Manager, they can use CDO, and you have that consistency of the UI, and you have the coexistence of those platforms as well. Now, since it is a SaaS-delivered application, you have tremendous uptime, and more importantly, there's no care and feeding of the platform for the customer. Right? It's in the cloud, it's always up. We have cloud instances across the US, one in Europe, in Germany, and I have here APJC evaluating. So how many folks here from APJC? So the more interest we can get from you and your customers for a local data center, we can push this. The German data center, they had the CDO instance up and running in 8 hours from that standpoint. Now, I can tell you, having used this from across the world many times, the CDO responsiveness, even from far away, is very fast because there's not this real-time notion, right? It's Meraki-esque in terms of that dashboard speed. So very fast and highly secure in terms of where customer configurations are, how they're stored, and so on. And my favorite thing about this delivery method is new versions and features. So when we were recording the demos, a lot of times I would log into the UI, and it's like, there's a new version of CDO. Please log out and log back in to access the new features. It's like, hey, great. Didn't even know there's a new version, and I didn't have to deal with it and apply patches and so on myself. In terms of supported platforms, of course, all of the new Firepower 1K and 2K platforms are supported. The existing supported ASA platforms, the 5500 series, Of notable absence here, the 4K and 9K firepower platforms are coming later this year. It's actually in beta testing right now, so those are coming. And then, of course, all the virtual platforms, including our cloud instances. And you might notice down in the bottom the Meraki MX. Now, we're going to have a demo on the MX. The idea behind the MX management is not to replace the Meraki dashboard, as you'll see. It's meant to augment it and provide a consistency of policy application. So very powerful capabilities across all these supported platforms. Now, when we talked about the management options, I want to make it very clear. Firepower Management Center not going away. Right? This is our premier enterprise-class on-premises management platform. The overwhelming majority of our customers today, of course, are using FMC. We'll continue to invest in FMC, put new features in FMC. Some of our demos of new integrations will even include FMC. So I want to make sure there's not a notion that that's somehow going away. But as the slide states, it's a SecOps-focused UI, right? Highly so. All of the capabilities in the UI workflows are really focused for that SecOps user around threat detection, threat prevention, threat hunting, and so on. Now, we don't lose all that when we go to CDO. As you see, we're going to show you a lot of SecOps threat hunting features. But the main design tenet for CDO was this NetOps focus. Again, using the common APIs and the look and feel, the policy management between CDO and that on-box manager, Firepower Device Manager, are the same. So it makes for a very easy learning curve going between them. Now, what about migration? And this will be another area we'll demo. We've had a migration tool. I don't know how many of you have used it for Firepower to take an ASA configuration and migrate it to Firepower Threat Defense. It worked. It was a bit of a headache. You had to stand up a special FMC, and you could migrate that config. We've taken that engine and moved it right into CDO, right into the cloud. So now natively in CDO, you can take an existing managed ASA in CDO and perform migration on the spot. And we're going to demo that. Or if you want, you can upload a config kind of out of band and do it that way as well. And that's a shared engine. That migration engine is shared. And we will maintain the standalone version as well. So customers with or without CDO will be able to take advantage of this. Now, you may be asking, well, what about competitive migrations? These are in beta test as well. Not all of these will ship by the end of the year. A couple of them will. I think that one on top, I'm not going to mention their name, will probably be the first one. So we'll have the ability to natively migrate these competitive platforms over to CDO as well and push those configs down to Firepower platforms. All right, so let's get to the demos. That's why we're here. This is the part where I get to let Will do all the work. So for the first set of demos, we wanted to go through really the why here. So what are the customer pain points behind what we wanted to deliver with CDO? And of course, this notion of enforcing policy consistently across my platforms, simplifying that policy, simplifying migrations from ASA, or as you can see soon, competitors, to Firepower Threat Defense, and then really minimizing that care and feeding of the platforms, spending less time on things like scheduling software upgrades and software pushes and configuration pushes. So, well, why don't you take us through the first set of demos?
Sure. Let's take a look. So how many here have had a chance to actually work with FDM, the device, on-box device manager? All right, really like Crew. So that's good. Something new to see then. So I actually like to start inside of FDM for this conversation, so you can get a sense of actually what's available to you today in that platform as even a small deployment, 1, 2 boxes or a couple of locations. This is all right through the UI. And so I can log in through this UI and start sort of mousing around and actually get information about the appliance, so the version of the device, interface configuration, and all the sort of system administration functions I need to do for that initial bootstrapping, getting it set up, are all right here. So when we start thinking in the CDO universe, this might be the one place I have to touch one time to configure things. But I also get good system admin information. I can look at health and performance on the device. I can see what my event activity is, CPU usage, all of the types of things that help me with the care and feeding. And then have more events, and we'll see those show up in other ways, from web application activity to intrusion events. Here's a view on our network overview, so we're seeing how access control rules and security intelligence rules are being played out. Now, not only can I start doing the care and feeding here, but this is also where I can set up HA. Very simple and straightforward to do. I basically come in here, choose my primary device, which is probably this one, put in my IP information, configure the secondary device, and deploy. It's pretty straightforward. Now, policies. That's always a big thing, right? We come to policies, and I start off on my access control policy. This is bread and butter for a firewall, right? But if you start looking, you'll notice all the little elements that we normally use, like SSL decryption. So I can have policies on what I'm going to decrypt and not decrypt. I can leverage my identity policies, so I can start bringing in identity information. In this case, we're using Identity Services Engine and Active Directory for passive auth. I've got, of course, Talus, right? That's our security intelligence. I'm getting IP reputational feeds directly into the FTD appliance, not having to worry about leveraging FMC for that, so I know where those IP blocks can happen. Configure my NAT, and then back to the access control policy. And as I do that, and if you scroll down, we'll broaden this out a little bit, you'll notice all the threat functions that I would see in Firepower Management Center's configuration are available to me. That means when I go in and edit a rule, I have all those tabs for things like URL filtering, things like my intrusion policies and file policies. All of those elements are available to me as a control function inside of the Firepower Device Management interface. And let's look at intrusion policies. These are the kind of dark science, right? Well, we've made an effort at making sure that customers are very satisfied with 3 default templates: our connectivity over security, our balanced policy, and our security over connectivity. But even in those cases, I do have times when I want to enable and disable rules, so we empower the user to be able to do that and search for them. Now, here's the fun one. Who misses the command line? Come on. Well, here's the command line. No SSH session, no having to wire up a console rig. Right here in the FDM interface, I can open up a box and just start issuing commands directly to the interface. So if I want to do a show xlate, show ARP, show route, I want to start doing troubleshooting at the command line. I've got access to that directly through the FDM web UI. So I'm not managing multiple windows, multiple sessions, it's all in one place. And that's pretty much our Firepower Device Management interface. This is how we set as a baseline.
Thanks, Will. And for those of you that have helped set up a customer or do a POV using Firepower Management Center with a standalone device in the past, it wasn't uncommon for us to hear, 3-4 hours to set all that up. We had to rack an appliance for the management center, an IP configuration, and then configure the firewall, et cetera, et cetera. From out of box to passing traffic with more or less the configuration you see on the screen here, 5 minutes. 15 if you need identity and you need to integrate ICE. It's a few more steps. It's very, very fast.
So let's take it a little bit further, right? This is the box itself, but we're here to talk about cloud, or at least a part of it. And we want to actually manage this box on cloud. It's more than just bootstrapping it. It's getting it up and running. So let's do that. I'm going to log into a CDO instance here. And the nice thing is, by the way, is that CDO instance supports Duo. So thank you, guys. We've got two-factor authentication set up and running. Now, from my CDO console, it's where I start managing devices, other configuration elements about my tenant. And you'll see here I've got a place to add new devices into the environment. I can add in ASA. I can install a fleet of ASAs. I can just basically onboard a whole bunch of devices at once. FTD, yay, that's now available to us. And Meraki, we're going to see both of those, as well as a third-party integration. So if I want to do things like AWS VPCs, I can initiate those connections here, set up those integrations, and then add those devices at a later point. But I'm going to go ahead and add an ASA device right now, something that we're going to take advantage of in a little while for our demos. Put in a name, IP address, and the port information. Now, this is also nice that we make that port configuration available, because if you're placing this behind an added gateway, you might do some port redirections to get it into the device. But this is all it takes. I hit go. CDO is now launching out to the box, finding it, and saying, oh, you got to authenticate. Terrific. So there's a certificate I can pull down to validate that it's the right box, and log into Jeff's account. And then remember, Jeff changed his password.
I normally type it in the first time.
Now, here's the fun part. This little bit, this is real time. Right? It's common to speed up or cut things out of demos. That was a real time, connect to the box, pull its configuration, and bring it into the system. And now it's finished. So I click finish, and we can actually start to see, there's the box right there. We'll see that it's synced and that it's online. So literally just, 20 seconds to bring a new ASA or firewall onto CDO, which now means I've got all the same configuration information, right? I've got data about the software version information, the firewall mode that it's in. I can scroll down and start seeing commands like being able to upgrade and manage software, links to troubleshooting, workflow modifications, management components if I want to make any changes to the configuration. But I'm going to take a closer look at one of our particular ASAs, right? And there's all those same other functions are still there. Notice the sync option there. If the device was out of sync, I'd be able to do a read policy, and it would go ahead and resync the device for me. Also, if I'm doing updates, policy changes, I can always make sure my deployments are scheduled if I want to. Now, big thing here, troubleshooting. We do full audit on that, so there's nice access to troubleshooting as well as a command line interface here as well. This now means I can do things like show ARP. I love that we have the history element on the background. And the other great part about this is all of this activity is part of the audit log and transactional activity. So CDO's keeping a record of the transactions you're doing against this box and against all the devices that are in your environment. This really now means we get a better sense of how change is happening inside of our environment. In any configuration changes, policy changes, et cetera, we want a record of that. So let's take a look at policies on this particular device. Here's my ASA component again. And I just pull up one of the access policies. And it looks like any ASA 5-tuple policy set, right? I've got what my policy is. I can show hit count on the particular rules. I can go in and edit my policy and modify any of the elements there, whether it's creating new objects or bringing in objects that already exist. It's leveraging the copy-paste tools to move and easily work with rules, duplicate them, modify them, and even see hit activity against the policy over time. So all of this now gives me a sense of not only am I editing the policy, but I can kind of evaluate performance of that policy as it works. Now, I've gone ahead and taken a closer look at the policy, but the real challenge for us is not just policies, it's objects. I mean, if I take a look at the objects being used in this environment, I've got 41 that aren't being used by any policy. I've got 12 that are duplicate, and 44 that are inconsistent. That means I've got an object with the same name, or two objects with the same name that may have different configurations. So let's look at this one. I have an object here called 15 may stop, and sure enough, there's 6 of them, and they're showing inconsistent. If I click resolve, I get taken into a sort of a differential editor, and I actually have 2 variations out of these 6. 4 of them have one IP address, 2 of them have another IP address. This is a real challenge, right? The whole point of having consistency in my objects is to be able to enforce policy consistently across my organization. If that's not good, then I need to resolve it. So by doing that resolve button, what ends up happening is we'll merge those objects together into a single instance that can be used across my entire enterprise. And we'll see that object replication and usage show up again and again. But now I'm starting to build consistent policy.
Fantastic. Well, and of course, if you wanted to rename those, you could. And that whole UI, multi-tenant, right from the get-go.
And role-based access.
And with role-based access control. So in the policy view, you can have read-only views for certain folks. Obviously, they wouldn't be able to change policies, et cetera. So, well, that was the onboarding and management of ASA. Very easy. Take us through migration.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not just ASA anymore. We've got a lot of boxes to replace out there in the field, and we want you to be successful at that. So let's take another look in. Once again, I've got this ASA device that I've just onboarded, ASA branch, right? And I actually want to make this an FTD box. So I can come here into the appliance and start seeing my migrate to FTD button. Once that's done, all I have to do is go ahead and hit the migration tool. And I can start putting a name to it. So maybe I want to give it a template name because I'm going to use this template consistently throughout my environment. Now we go out and we start pulling the policy. We're dragging content information out of it and starting to parse it. That's actually the longest part, is the parsing of the information and converting it into an FTD format and then building a report. That template report is great because now what I can do is I can pull down this report and we'll take a look at it. It's just an HTML file. And it's going to show me a summary and detailed configuration information that's going to be changed across the appliance. This allows me to validate what can and can't move across in the potential gaps that you may have, but you'll get full information on that. The migration log is a diagnostic tool. This allows me to be able to see if anything does fail, I'll get a full content review on how that application happened. Now I just choose my device. So I've taken this policy out of my ASA. I'm going to apply it to, say, a new FTD appliance that I've deployed inside of my environment. Select that, hit select, and I can then time the migration. I can specify to do it now or have it do it at a scheduled moment later on. Most importantly, interfaces, right? We want to make sure we've got good interface translation, so we assign interface parity between the devices right here on the screen. This is also good for ensuring consistency of my interface application across my enterprise. Let's make sure all of our branches are the same when we have to send field personnel out there. Once it's done, it comes back and tells me a high-level summary. How many interfaces, how many objects, how many routes, et cetera, are going to be applied to the component. And if I'm satisfied, I hit Apply Template, and our migration starts to happen. It's that easy. Now, taking it a step further, we also have policy configuration now. We were looking at ASA. What about FTD? And that's the big thing, right? We want everyone on FTD. Well, let's take a look at what FTD can be configured within CDO. Again, I select one of our FTD devices, and you'll see all the same sort of management configuration components. I'm going to jump into my policy, and right away you should see that this is a next-gen firewall policy. We see threat components in the action column and a whole layer 7 detection category. Across the top, we still have our SSL decryption, our identity, and our security intelligence functions. So now I can just start modifying the policy to see as I want. Maybe using the down arrow to change location of the rule in the stack. Hitting a plus will open up an element where I can choose predefined objects that are already created for that, maybe consistent for that particular category. Or hitting an open space in the box allows me to come into a deeper editor to find objects used, to edit the rule, or to remove it altogether. Now, coming down into another rule, I can just select it to do, oh, I'm sorry, we want to do an upgrade now. So let's do an upgrade. All right, this is a big challenge in software revision control. Well, it's very simple. I just select my device, choose a scheduled time, and then specify to pull from the CDO repository. We'll always maintain a current version of the latest version of code, so it's easy for you to choose that upgrade or move through that upgrade path that you want. And if you still want to download it from support, you can do that, stand it up on your own server, and deploy off that local one. You also get the option to stage it, whether you copy it only and then do the implementation later, or you do them both at the same time. But this is really all it takes. This now means I could schedule an upgrade for 20 firewalls over an evening's period without any other effort than doing this and watching my email for a notification.
Thanks, Will. And upgrades, by the way, are one of the #1 complaints customers had, because previous to CDO, you had to push all the upgrades from the FMC. Maybe that meant over a slow link across the world, over a VPN tunnel, could take hours. Now it comes from the cloud right to the device. Or, as Will showed you, you can also host it locally if you want and pull it from a local URL.
And why bother? That's just what beats the bandwidth link.
The upgrades super quick, everything right inside of the platform. Again, another customer objection that was a primary focus to make this really, really easy. So hopefully you can see, though, that this scalable policy management, even though we had that ASA and FTD policy, obviously the FTD policy had those next-gen capabilities, but the object database is the same, right? You could use objects in an ASA, same object in an FTD policy, integrated migration tool, and that easy care and feeding of the platforms. No more having to spend hours and hours upgrading the devices. So much, much easier with CDO. Now, we focused there on FTD and ASA management. I referenced earlier other platforms that customers have, of course, and we want to be able to provide that same consistency of configuration and policy management to those platforms as well. So I'm going to show you a couple here. Will's going to walk you through a couple here. The first one will be Meraki. Will, why don't you take us through this one?
Yeah, that'd be great. So most of us have had a chance to use Meraki. Anyone here really loves it? Has customers that really love it? No? Gosh, I love my Meraki kit. It's the best thing in the world. It's real simple. It's really easy to implement. It's really cheap. And it doesn't integrate with the rest of my enterprise. Except now. Right? Well, that's a little hyperbolic. But that's the whole point now, is CDO can allow me to onboard Meraki components into my configuration policies. So you'll actually see there's a Meraki demo kit inside of this screen. And if I go ahead and click on that, I can get some basic information about it. But here's the most important. It's the policy. Right? Meraki's still managing that hardware for me. But I want to manage the policy and make it consistent with the rest of my environment. And I can see that my source and destination information components are there. And you'll see they already start to look a bit like objects. Right? Well, that's exactly what they are. In fact, if I go ahead and modify any one of those, I can leverage the entire object database or build a whole new rule. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a blacklist rule. It's pretty consistent for a lot of organizations nowadays. Have a dynamically updating blacklist object rule that you're always pushing your own intelligence into. So I've created this object called blacklist, or it's already been made, and I'm just adding it to this particular rule set. So I've got a blacklist object inside of CDO already. I've saved that rule, and I've made it the first rule in the stack, so it's all good. And now all I have to do is deploy it and go check it out. Right? So I hit my deploy button, and we're going to review it first. We get a nice reviewer editor. This is more auditing on those policy changes, so it'll give me a chance to see what's being added, and I can actually see what the rule set is and the components being done. I hit sync. All done. And now let's go take a look at how it showed up inside of CDO. Or I'm sorry, inside of Meraki. And there we take a look at the Meraki, we've refreshed it, and there's our IP address added in as our blacklist, and even comments showing that this information came from CDO. So I've got validation, or at least information that says, oh yeah, this was a CDO managed rule. Very straightforward, works both ways. So I can start adding and taking objects out of Meraki and start getting policy consistency across the environment.
And I want to make clear, guys, this is not meant to replace the Meraki dashboard, right? Customers still going to use the Meraki dashboard for all of the functions that it's meant to do and great at. What's happening here is CDO is leveraging the integrated APIs, so APIs in CDO, leveraging the integrated APIs in the Meraki dashboard to just take over this L3, L4 policy and leverage that shared object model inside of CDO for that consistency. Very, very easy. And allows, again, for that consistency of policy to spread across different control points.
That's absolutely right. Now, what's really compelling for this is that a lot of our Meraki customers have very wide branch deployments, right? We'll see those in hundreds and thousands of devices being managed. But the other place we have hundreds and thousands of devices being managed is in virtual, right? We've got customers using VPCs in AWS that are coming up and down. They've got hundreds of them, and oftentimes it's elastically. So they may just be showing up. But let's see how CDO handles them as well. Right? I can start managing AWS security groups in CDO as well. You'll notice here we've got a different tenant, and what I've done is we've actually added in, or are adding in, an AWS VPC. It's real simple. I click on that particular object, I enter the account credentials, choose my region, choose the specific VPC that I want to make modifications to, add or create a name for it, and voila, I'm inside of it. Now I can also create new VPCs here and or start modifying any of the particular rules inside this particular VPC. So I can add rules, I can modify them, I can change the objects in it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a specific rule against this VPC. And I've already done that, just saved you the steps here because it's exactly the same as any other rule edit. But more importantly, here are the changes. And take a look. For example, that 10.1.1/32 address that we have in here, we're putting this inside of that rule set, as well as 7 other objects that we want to make sure the VPC has as part of its configuration. If anything was being removed, it'd be red. If it was edits to things that were currently there, they'd be blue. Deployed it, switch over to AWS and take a quick look at our inbound rules, and sure enough, there's our 10.1.1/32 IP address. I don't have to juggle around and spend hours sort of organizing all the AWS rule sets, which can get kind of complex if I don't have a very mindful implementation process.
Yeah, and those of you who haven't seen it, this is the rule editor that AWS provides. It's not bad if you got 4 rules. Imagine you had hundreds of rules. Imagine you had now hundreds of VPCs. So managing that and trying to provide any consistency, customers basically don't use it because it's too hard. But being able to bring those into CDO becomes very, very easy to manage that policy. And again, we have shared objects from our other firewall platforms we can use in those VPC AWS rules. So very, very easy. Thanks, Will.
Yeah.
So easy integration and easy ability to provide consistency of policy and continuity of those objects across our platforms, making it much easier for our customers to have consistency across those control points. So let's show you really quick how CDO is priced, and we have some great promos to start the year. As you would have guessed, CDO is a subscription model, so 1, 3, and 5-year subscriptions. And what's really cool right now, we're giving customers a free 1-year license of CDO with every new Firepower Threat Defense platform they buy. In addition to that, for existing platforms that they already own, all of the license options, we're giving them 50% off of that CDO license. That's on top of the standard discount, guys. So I threw some examples in the corner, like our small Firepower 1010 that we just announced. They're about $1,200. So 1-year subscription, 5% of that $1,200, 50% off on top of their standard discount. It's basically free. There's no reason not to trial this with your customers and show them how easy it is to manage these platforms in CDO. Now, that's management and that's policy management, but that's not enough. Customers loved Firepower Management Center because it did a heck of a lot more than just manage policy. It had logging, and it had analytics. So let's go through and show you what we can do with CDO with our new security analytics and logging function. So again, we wanted to be able to bring these same capabilities that customers love from FMC without the complexity into CDO. And that is where we introduced this new capability called security analytics and logging. Taking events natively from those Firepower Threat Defense platforms natively up into the cloud for storage and viewing inside of CDO. But we didn't stop there. We're also giving customers to add on, this is a license tier, an analytics function. So basic license tier, just logging that we'll demo. Second license tier is analytics of that. Now the analytics inside of FMC, pretty awesome. It's not exactly the same here as you'll see, but also very awesome and very powerful. We're using the power of StealthWatch Cloud to perform analytics on those Firepower logs coming up. So if any of you have seen and used StealthWatch Cloud, I did a demo of it up on stage here last year. Exact same capabilities now can be performed on those Firepower logs, and we're going to walk through that for you. So why do we care? Well, we need to be able to simplify firewall logging. Customers they want an all-in-one solution. They want it all from us. They don't want to be told, well, here's the firewall. Go buy a logging platform from somebody else, right? They want one-stop shop for a full solution. They want reporting on those logs, and they want to be able to quickly find threats. They still want the analytics that FMC provided. There's no point in having a firewall if you can't see and track down bad things that happen and make sure you prevented them or you can remediate them afterwards. So, Will, why don't you take us through how we can do this?
Sure. We're going to start in CDO because there's a lot that's there already. Right? So coming into CDO, I choose this monitoring FTD tab, and I've already got access to the events that FTD appliance is generating. This is connection event activity with cloud-supported storage, so a lot of connection events can be maintained in there, right? We don't worry about that anymore. I can scroll down. We'll see malware events. We'll see intrusion events. These are the types of security-relevant events that are being generated on FTD coming directly into the CDO environment. And the connection events have the same fidelity that we're used to with Firepower events. It's not just source IP and basic session information. We're getting that application data. We're seeing which rule it's associated with. We're seeing which access policy. We get time information about first and last packets. We get full sort of connection-relevant data that's associated with it, just like I would see inside of FMC. Now, trying to go through a list can be pretty exhaustive, so we've got a filter option. It allows us to look at connection, intrusion, file, malware events. I specify what I want in a time range. I can choose the specific sensors I want to look at or any particular IP address I want to track or try to filter on. I can pin the tab, allows me to be able to do work real time inside that data set of what's happening. This is nice, right? And now means I get to do a little bit of basic event analysis. And if I need context, I can still get that too, right? I need a little bit of context, sort of the big picture. And we'll see the network reports option in a little bit more detail. But I can do it for single appliances, for groups of appliances, all of the FTD components across. Now, we don't just do event analytics in CDO. We have StealthWatch Cloud now, right? And so this is another integration option. By choosing security analytics here, this will pivot me over to StealthWatch Cloud. And what I've done with the FTD appliance is I'm basically dual reporting. It's sending all connection data into StealthWatch Cloud while all the connection and event information is going into CDO. And as I scroll down, this is StealthWatch Cloud with the traffic from that FTD appliance showing here. I can see device activity, the traffic encryption amounts, which devices are talking, DNS activity, high-risk countries, and here's the security relevant bit, those observations. Right, this is where StealthWatch Cloud has always been extraordinarily powerful for us. It's to take observations on connection activity and say, this may be of a security concern to you. So now I'm starting to get that analytics. I like to call it the tier 2 analyst that no one can afford, that's able to just kind of look through things and go, yeah, that may be wrong. That may be wrong. They seem like wizards. But here we start providing that analytical information right to the customer just off the connection event feed coming directly from FTD into the cloud. And I may be seeing server observations, traffic heartbeats, looking for anomalous changes there. Am I getting high throughput communications that are outside of my norm, a potential data loss incident? looking at high connection activity, observation of malicious protocols, et cetera. And all the capabilities of StealthWatch Cloud show up there. In fact, if I've got the full StealthWatch Cloud implementation, I can also start pulling in the feeds from my east-west traffic. So not just be limited to the next-gen firewalls or FTD appliances that I'm seeing, but start to see my entire enterprise by offering StealthWatch Cloud as a
Very
full
cool, Will.
solution.
And this is one of the things customers loved about FMC was the powerful analytics. It was also one of the things that had the hardest learning curve, right? It's using that analytics capability. Heck, even doing searching and filtering in the connection event viewer in FMC had a learning curve to it. Extraordinarily easy in CDO, and you have that power and simplicity of that StealthWatch Cloud view of your CDO, your logging repository data. So very, very easy.
That's right, and it's just leveraging that connection data that they understand so well.
So we get that cloud logging. We get those reports. I think you're going to show those reports
we're
more
see
in the
those
last
more
set
in
of demos. And we get that analytics of StealthWatch Cloud as well, built right into that CDO package that we'll share with you in a bit. Fantastic. Now, Will, with these licenses, we do offer a couple different choices, and you referenced the third tier. So the first tier is just the logging and troubleshooting license. So that gives you all of the logging that Will started with, the connection, malware, file events, intrusion events, right in CDO. And the second tier, that adds on the ability to have the StealthWatch Cloud analytics applied to that data. And that was the demo where we pivoted over to what that StealthWatch Cloud views look like. So that's what we're calling firewall analytics and detection. And then the third tier on the right in the green is basically the full StealthWatch Cloud license we've been selling today. The distinction here is with that third tier, now customers can deploy and collect data east-west inside multiple environments. We also allow customers to directly monitor cloud IaaS environments like Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, where we're pulling VPC flow logs, et cetera. So that third tier gives the full power of StealthWatch Cloud in addition to monitoring that firepower connection data. Now, here's what those packages look like. And again, we have a promotion here. For the first couple quarters here, we're giving 15% off of that full StealthWatch Cloud licensing tier. The logging-only tier, as you can see, very inexpensive, and that's orderable right now. So standard discounts apply there, so it's very, very inexpensive for this guy. So onboarding a new customer, CDO license, and then the security analytics and logging license that they want for firepower. So a very powerful set of capabilities. Now, we talked about the management capabilities. We showed off logging, analytics, right? Things that customers love about FMC. But what about being able to respond and remediate threats?
Yeah, this is where it's time to get dirty.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody in the room has seen the CTR demo, and we've been slowly building and building and building upon CTR while we're here now with Firepower. So, Will, why don't you take us through our latest set of integrations here with Firepower and Cisco Threat Response?
Absolutely. So, quick refresher. Let's make sure we're all on the same page about one or two things on CTR. CTR is our threat response platform. Ultimately, long-term, this is the single console that an analyst is going to collect and gather all their information and be able to build a remediation case. And it leverages data from multiple sources, external sources like Talos. Now, all the internal sources from your own organizations, whether it's AMP for endpoints, email, and very importantly, our next-gen firewall, since 6.4 that's become available. You'll also see me use a browser plugin a couple of times. You won't actually see the plugin, but you'll see some menu option that's driven by that. And it's a great attachment to be able to plug into your AMP intelligence or your CTR intelligence environment. So let's take a look. I'm a SecOps analyst, and this is the other side we were trying to sell to, right? Our network engineers hopefully are a lot more happier about what they've got. But ultimately, I want one place to look to be able to see the event. So I'm going to take you through a chain of different stages to see how we reduce down to that one place I need to be able to spend my time. I want to know what devices on my host are compromised without having to build a lot of different filters, a lot of different queries. I want to be able to make investigations quick and simple. And also, I want to start automating my responses. So we're going to go through a series of little elements to see that, show you sort of the day in the life of me as a SecOps guy. And starting in FDM, right? Let's go take a look inside of FDM. I know this thing is generating intrusion events now. In fact, we've got a number of appliances set up, all receiving the same threat feed. And yep, sure enough, there's IPS events there. Terrific. But I don't want to deal with them on this. Box by box, that's crazy. I want cloud services. We've already seen those events being sent up to Cisco Defense Orchestrator, But I want them also going into Cisco Threat Response. And it's as simple as clicking the enable, and it'll provide authentication credentials into our Security Services Exchange, which is basically just the data exchange portal that CTR queries against. Is this where all of my intrusion events are getting deposited? And I can open up those intrusion events. I can take a look at them to see the fidelity on them. You'll see all the data about an intrusion event that Firepower generates. There's also that promote to incident ticket. That's actually customizable in that I can set conditions for what events would be promoted. That way I can identify certain events that are going to go straight into CTR. Now, coming over to CDO, I'm going to take a look at another FTD appliance that's seeing the exact same threat traffic. I'm going to take in and look at my high-level network report. We saw this earlier, but as an analyst, I want the chart to be a little bit more immediately meaningful. So I'm going to change it around, maybe make a bar chart out of one. I can look through the attackers and, okay, fine, there's some external IP addresses, destinations. Yeah, it's a little bit of both, internal and external. Targets, yeah, a lot of internal addresses there. Let me switch that to a table view. Okay, that jumps out, 174. It's a known host for me. I've been having some problems with that address already. Let me see what other types of events I've got going on. Certainly a lot. Right now, I'm just kind of going based off of my gut. The browser plugins, some malware. I'm going to focus on those first for right now. All right, so I'm doing that. I switch over to my event logging. A lot of events here. Okay, well, at least I can filter on it, right? So I'll go up top and just type in the IP address of the host that I was concerned about. So that 192.168 and something .174. There we go. Hit return. And good. Now I've got just those intrusion events associated with that device. Makes it a little bit easier for me to reduce that information down. I can see which policy it came out of. I see the snort rule that it fired on. It's definitely malware CNC, but I don't have the big picture. I actually want to get that. So I'm going to take advantage of that plugin and cross-launch into Cisco Threat Response on the investigation console. Grabs that IP address, and now CTR is going out and trying to build as much story around this particular incident as it can based off of the intrusion events that have already been submitted, as well as data from Umbrella, from AMP for Endpoints, from ESA. And this is that host, and it's talked to an external IP, and Umbrella is reporting that that is a malicious domain. So there's two pieces of evidence now that says this is an invalid or a bad thing, right? Not just an intrusion event that was blocked, but there's some domain interactions. I may want to check on that. But I can see also the number of sightings that have showed up inside of this. All right, great. But I've got other incidents, right? And I've already had the system promote those. Let's take a look at those browser plugins that I was concerned about. I decided to have them be promoted into CTR, so I haven't had to go dig them up anymore. I take a look at one of them, and sure enough, it's a IPS event rule again. It's showing that browser plugin attack, and I can see the specific observable showing me at least a host that it's landed on the network, right, that 4.0 host. See what the rule is. But I want to know, has it shown up anywhere else? So let's ask. I can use the intelligence element to search not only public sources, but all my private sources. And I'm just going to type in browser plugin. What I'm doing is I'm searching for any of the events across my field that has that specific phrase in it. Generally, it'll be the IPS events, and now I've got a second host. It's not just that 4.0 host, but also another internal host that has this particular exploit characteristic being seen. So now I've got some additional sightings. This is really great. I want to add those to my casebook. Now, if I think about everything I just did in those first three screens, I could have done them all right here instead. I could have started asking about specific intrusion conditions. I could have started asking about specific incidents that were already promoted. I could have done most of that work right here. Now I've got my casebook. I've got my 174 address, my other two devices. I've collected data from multiple sources, just sort of all put together. This is now my remediation report. I'll give this off to my remediation team and say, go fix these devices. Here's the problems that have been associated with it. However, let's make sure we don't leave FMC out, right? That's what I'm doing inside of CTR. We want to make sure you guys know that FMC is still there. What's really great is since 6.4, we've taken FMC and made sure it's integratable too. Same data set I'm looking at, all my same analytical tools. There's that 174 address again. Now, if I want to get that data from there, all I have to do is come into my system integration screen. Here, I'll now click the cloud services, and all of these same intrusion events that we were seeing would be floated up into the Security Services Exchange and accessible to me through CTR. What's nice with FMC, though, is I'm getting other events that I can start pivoting on as well. FMC has built-in cross-launch functionality. So if I don't want to just focus on my intrusion events, I'm concerned about malware too. Because remember, FMC is getting intelligence from AMP from endpoints, AMP from network. I can find a SHA, and I can go ahead and do things like cross-launch into ThreatGrid for analytics, or cross-launch into Cisco Threat Response to identify the SHA, see what's going on, and now this would be the time to say, what other places we found sightings on that across my enterprise? So we're bringing FMC into CTR as part of that whole firepower with CTR integration as well. And of course, here's a showing of the sightings around that.
Fantastic, Will. So we saw a couple of cool things there, and I want to be clear. You started that demo in FDM. That CTR integration works with FTM alone if that's all the customer has.
It really does. That's exactly right.
As well, you have tight integration with CDO, and then, of course, FMC as well. And if you do have a customer that may end up with a mix, right, which we'll see a lot, right? Customer might have an FMC installation managing data center firewalls and perhaps using CDO to manage remote locations. You can still have an integration of all of that threat data into CTR.
This is what my SecOps teams are really looking for. It's burdensome to have to figure out all the 10 different places I have to go. Not just 10 different consoles, 10 different places. But now to start saying, all right, I've got my CDO console, my FMC, CTR, and CTR is really where I do my bread
and what do we
butter
charge
work.
for CTR?
It's nothing. Nothing.
Comes with the firewall, right? It comes with whatever platforms, Cisco security platforms the customers have. So, well, that's really cool. Now, if you do discover threats in CTR, I talked about how we have these great APIs and how CDO is API-based. What can we do to automate a response?
Well, response is the important part, right? It is called Cisco Threat Response. Since this is an API-forward process, this means we're going to be bringing new capabilities into the platform all the time. And it's all just being done in software and integrating the APIs. So some proof of concept code is going to be shown to you, again, from the day of the life of a SecOps analyst. I've logged into Talus's blog, and I'm taking a look through it and going, okay, there's some possible problems here. Maybe I should be concerned. And I use my little CTR plugin, and it's actually gone back and said, oh, wow, that plugin says there's a lot of malicious and unknown and suspicious things. So let's see what is showing up inside of my environment. Yeah, Talus was right. It's a bad day. It's a bad world. I got to deal with that. So I'll just kind of scan through here, and I got to pick and choose something, right? Maybe I'll start with IP addresses. IPs are something I can be very actionable with on the firewall. Determine, an IP address. Here's something that's got observable, and look at that. We've added in an add to CTR mitigation. This is essentially me saying I've built an object over inside of CDO that's going to allow me to mitigate. Coming over here into CDO, I open up my CTR mitigation object just to show you the IPs that are in there. There's 2 already. Now I'm going to go back over to CTR and select that add to CTR mitigation. We're now reaching out to CDO, and we're writing into a specific object. Come back over here, refresh my object view, take a look. Now there's 3 IP addresses in there. Just like that, I can start stopping that address. This now means my SecOps responders can start issuing blacklist controls, usually outside of firewall change rule policies. Allows them to be immediate responders on things that have taken some type of remediation or investigation requirement, and they can just as easily take those out through the same process. Now, this is our proof of concept code, but we should be seeing this coming into CTR in the next few months.
And what I love about this POC code, the CTR team wrote this without any help from the CDO team at all, because they leveraged the APIs built into CDO,
Yep.
and leveraged those APIs to build this plugin. That's how easy it is, and that's the power of this API integration. Makes it very easy for us to add capabilities and to share data between Cisco security solutions. So that gives us this single pane of glass for threats, right, with CTR. Again, what do we charge for CTR? It comes, I don't want to say nothing, it comes with the security products, right? So there's no extra charge for this. As customers layer on Cisco security products, the automatic integration with CTR just works, and it expands the power of every capability they have in conjunction with all the others. We get automated investigation capability and that threat-focused, threat hunting view in CTR to find problems. And, of course, we have this right-click remediation. So very powerful. Will, thanks for that.
Yeah.
And, Steve, why don't you come up and take us through what else we have in store to help our folks sell here in the field.
Thank you, guys. That was amazing. So, what do you think? Thank you. Absolutely. I agree. I mean, I get quite excited when I see that, and I've seen that a few times now. It solves a lot of problems. Our customers are saying the same thing. They're saying it can save me time, it can save me money, and it can improve my security posture. That's exactly where we want to be. And it's the type of customers are Nike and Hilton and education customers and health customers, enterprises that have distributed networks. We also had a great comment from somebody in the audience yesterday that said exactly this. I went from, oh man, I screwed up and signed up for an NGFW session, to wanting to get my CDO going for my home lab to manage my network. So if you feel like that as well, then please do write that in the comments, because we do try and deliver an impactful session. And the reason that I get excited about this is because it really helps make sure that we sell from our strengths. When we think about the challenges that we've got in convincing customers on firewalls and network security in general, we've got a lot of competition that have made sort of the running. They've set the agenda on their terms, and they've actually made inroads into our customer base, and we've got to stop that, because we have a massive customer base. We talk about this all the time, and I think now we've got the tools to really go and attack that, modernization of the network infrastructure in a big way. And we're talking, 1.6 billion and 4,000 plus customers, and that's why it really excites me for FY20 and beyond. It's taking advantage of the fact that we have a wide set of services and or capabilities that we can offer, from MX to virtual to FTD and the new FTD platforms. It's growing. It's becoming more complex now. We can help customers manage this better. The POV thing, Jeff did mention that. FMC was a little bit of a challenge to set up and get POVs going. We can now use CDO to really speed that whole process up and get customers using it more quickly. And ultimately, when we see the integration, and the last piece really does hit home, I think, where we're showing how we can share information across the platform, CTR being able to do that both ways, using APIs and cloud to deliver real value here. So I think we've got a great opportunity. We've got great ways of helping you, actually, not just from the technology perspective, but also the programs that we can offer, ranging from design reviews that actually help our partners and yourselves make sure that you're actually submitting a proposal that has been checked by our team. Ignite the Firewall campaign, that remains into Q1. Significant discounts for partners to get more profitability and feel more positive and confident about taking our solutions out to market. 80% off hardware, 70% off software. That continues. The CDO free license also for new hardware purchases. We've got a great competitive offer here, and we want our partners to feel really confident about taking this out to market. We'll help them with migrations. That has been a challenge before, but we've got help desk people now on the phone, on WebEx, helping customers and partners actually deliver that for customers. And ultimately, we can offer our CX capabilities as well through partners or directly. So those are the programs that we've got to support the great technology that you've just seen. So I hope that we've delivered these three things to you. If you agree, please mark us up on your surveys. Did we deliver and show you how easy it is to migrate ASA to next-gen firewall? Did we show you how consistent and easy it is to enforce those policies and manage that whole complex area that our network admins have to deal with, and ultimately the threat response piece, adding real value towards the end? I hope we did. I hope you enjoyed the session. My final point is, be the bridge between ASA and FTD. Thank you.